Hey everyone. Thanks for joining. Let's give it a few minutes to get started. Hey Maddie. I was a little bit late for the last one, so hopefully I'll join. There is a high likelihood that my voice will give out by the end of this. If you can hear it a little bit already. Um, I'm gonna try to drink a lot of water as we do this. But let's see, I don't need it tomorrow, so we can sort of redline this thing and try to push it. Okay, so we are going to do resume reviews live. We and we're going to try to continue to do these because I think seeing them in action is the best way to do it. Please ask your questions. Part of the Teal team, either Leah or Liam, will be fielding things in on LinkedIn or YouTube. We are streaming to both LinkedIn and YouTube today. I don't know if we get the YouTube comments live, so this is the first time we do that. But please, answering the questions is great. And also questions, if we don't get to them in the live stream, that's great sort of fodder for us to make other videos asynchronously or follow these in the next one. And we do record these, so take notes, but we record them and we'll publish them out. We have a submission link. You can just upload it. So actually, I just fixed the Zapier integration. Actually, it was working. Leah built it. It was great. But now I just sort of integrated it. So you can just upload it through a form. But also, if it's easier for you, feel free to DM it to me. The only thing is we will use it live. I take your name off. You'll see like some of the ones we do today. But we do part of what you're agreeing to is to allow us to use it live. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in and start this process. I'm going to try a new setup today. I sort of hooked up my iPad as another monitor. So let me see if I can add it. Share screen and okay, cool. So far, so good. All right, so we'll dive into it. Okay, here we've got this is actually one of the Google Doc standard templates. Which I think is good. It's got a little bit of like color, which is nice. Actually, there's a template like this that's making its way into the resume builder next week. You got a nice little accent color, which is cool. But there's a few things already here. So this is kind of above the fold. I'm looking at this on my iPad, but this is essentially what someone would see if they opened it up on their screen. And what immediately calls out to me is all this space is wasted, right? So you want to make an impact. Now, I'm all for letting text breathe and not having it feel too cramped. So I actually think that's a good thing. But this, for me, feels to the extreme the other way around, right? You've got, even on your professional summary here, you've got a whole bunch wasted. So a few things that just above the fold that I would already do different. Contact info is fine. But honestly, if this whole box was stretched out this way, I would prefer that. That gets me space back. Then if this, just think about all the space we have here, this could actually span like that. So now, let me see if I can undo all that, right? This area would probably get to about that big. And so now I've got a punchy statement. And how can I make this information even more impactful? I don't think professional summary is helpful as text. It's already implied. It's there. So I think you could put this here. And so now you are projecting a title. This is what I want to be. You're channeling the role you want. And I like that because there's nowhere else on your resume, because most of your resume is a sort of historical representation of what you've done. This is a spot in the professional summary as well, is where you can talk about what you want to do. And I think having those words on there are a good thing. It's not about tricking a bot or an ATS or anything like that. But, I think having those words that are in the job description, especially the role you're applying to, if you haven't had that job before, is a really great place to do that. But professional summary, that's implied. I get what it is, and I don't really need it. So that's just some high level formatting things that I would do. And the way I do these reviews, also for anyone that hasn't watched me do these before, is I just do them on the fly. I don't review these in advance because I kind of want to give you these immediate first impressions that would go through my mind if I was reviewing these resumes as applicants for a position at Teal or any of the other jobs I've hired for in the past. All right, so let's get rid of those. Now let's go. Let's start to look at the content. Okay, so experience in the last 15 years in all levels of customer support and operations, responsible for monitoring full management accountability for market execution. Martian, okay, you guys, you don't need me to read it for you. You can see it. So I like the 15 years, right? Especially, and I like that all levels of customer support and operations. If you go to the requirement sections of most job descriptions, the first line is years of experience. I hate it. I don't think years of experience are really an indicator of anything. But when folks are hiring, a lot of times their mandate is they need to have a minimum in this. And it's one of the first things someone goes to try to compute. And so if you can just check that off the list for somebody and they don't have to go, infer it from your work history and sort of say, well, was that job in this, because it's usually not like 5 years total. It's like 5 years in performance marketing. So now I need to kind of try to discern that. So what I love is right there, straight out of the gates. First sentence is address that requirement. Now, if you do not have the experience to satisfy that requirement, get crafty, and you're going to have to do other things, which we can talk about in other videos. But if you do, take out the guesswork, just nail it right there on the first line, which I like that this does. Then the rest of this professional summary doesn't give me much. The professional summary, if you've watched anything I've said on resumes, I like the professional summary because it allows you to do metrics for your career in aggregate. So as we go further down, let's see if there's things we can do, and I can just show by example instead of trying to make them up right now. But I think all this extra stuff down here, there's some good keywords, sales, operations, merchandising, standards, compliance, good keywords. I think it's great. I think it's like a B+ professional summary. I think we can get it to an A+. All right, let's scroll down a little. Next section we see here is skills. I've seen this used a lot up at the top of a resume, but what I think these two sections are trying to do the same thing, right? They're trying to give me a preview of my abilities and expedite the person understanding what I'm good at. I don't like having both. I think either on their own is fine. I think having both is redundant. At the top of your resume, I actually think that skill section at the bottom is great because it gives me, I'll just like skim down if I want to see it. But I think having them both now take almost 60% of the top of the page, I think is redundant. So if there's words in here that really, really matter, I would try to get them in here, but it's also kind of funny that they're not the same, right? So merchandising, I don't see it in the skills. And so if it's important enough to be in my professional summary, put it again in the skills. But it also shows that like they're doing two different things. Just try to figure out your narrative and make it the same. Another thing is I'm starting to see variation in font. If I had to guess visually, this top one's a little bigger than this one. Just be consistent. Again, these are nitpicky, teeny things, but they're just like they make the person think. All right, now let's get to experience. So there's something about this template. I don't know what happened, but there's just a bunch of space on the right that seems funky. Maybe they're trying to make the lines short, or this was a 2-column resume. They chose to make a 1-column resume. It's fine. I would do that. Don't waste that because then you can get all that that screen real estate back. So, all right, now let's look here. So, customer service representative, Amtrak. Okay, that works. And I'm a fan of company first instead of position first. I think it's 6 one way, half dozen the other, purely professional preference. So again, that's just my take. I think Amtrak is a very recognizable brand. Part of the criteria I would use in thinking through whether to do that or not is if it's a known brand, because people can very quickly build connection to it. So in this case, I think I would put Amtrak first, but I don't think that's going to get you hired or not hired. So again, that's just my personal opinion. Now let's see here. Actively seeking solutions to customer needs. Okay, so I don't think this is a great achievement. Actively seeking also, just think about the language, right? People are rushing. Actively seeking is what people put in objective statements, and which objective statements I think are bad. So it's like, I'm already kind of like, wait, you're actively seeking, you're asking. So I just think like the wording of that bullet's a little confusing. This person was actively seeking solutions to customer needs. I just think like the wording of that is a little tricky. Now let's look at this one. Effectively communicated ultimately improve the company's metric by 44%. This is too broad. I think anybody could say this and it doesn't mean anything. I think specificity on the bullets is really important. Analyze stakeholder opportunities to improve company metrics using. Okay, this right now is the best metric. It's buried 3 down and you already lost me on the first 2. I probably would have never even read it. So move that one to the first one. It's the best metric it's the best achievement out of all of these. Yeah, I would probably just get rid of both of those and just use these 3. And now, you're closer to this resume being 1 page. And now as we think about the professional summary, this is an interesting metric, increasing company revenues by 50%. That's something we could maybe aggregate up in the professional summary. Okay, so we've got a whole bunch more achievements for this job. Yeah, if we can get them all into 1 page, amazing, and sort of do a break at a section, not always possible. Successfully transmitted customer feedback, 15%. There are so many better achieved, just like my eyes go to numbers, right? I would take all the ones with numbers, put those up above. If you can make those compressions on the top part, this resume could easily be 1 page. All right, now let's look at some of these. These are great, but yeah, this resume could easily become 1 page, be punchy and to the point, and it's got some great metrics at the bottom, right, that I think are really good. Now, the next layer would be, what's the job this person's applying to? I'm going to assume it's customer service roles, and they can tailor that language. But as a step 1 to just make this a general best practices good resume, those are some of the changes I would make. All right, so those are a little less along the lines of for customer service representative. That was just kind of general best practices. Let me take a pause here and look at any questions. So I'll stop my screen share. Okay. So, all right, I will work my way backwards. Carolyn, yes, this will be recorded and will be published on YouTube. So don't worry, we will break it up and we will try to get to it. Okay, scrolling my way to the top. All the welcomes, thank you, hello. Okay. All right. Okay, so the question is, does the font make a difference to the ATS? No. Generally, we want to do very little things for the ATS. The ATS is not a good reason to really do anything whatsoever. All right, let's just think about a human being reading this resume. We want to reduce any kind of cognitive load on things that take their attention away from why we're the best candidate possible. And that's always what I'm looking for. Just what are these little things that just like, why'd they do that? Just let's strip them away. So let's just make all the font the same, right? It's like, wait, what? Right? You're trying to emphasize something, right? I've seen resumes that use italic, regular, bold. And so it's this effort to try to kind of bring attention to different things. And at the end of the day, I think it's just confusing because people don't understand that notation system. So even like different font sizes and things like that. So I just think less is more when it comes to these things. And that's generally just, when I say just make these the same, because I saw a great quote the other day that when 2 things are similar enough that they can be confused as a mistake rather than deliberate, that's probably what someone's going to do. Right. So if you're on a website and you notice these like slightly different font sizes, but not the same, it's like, well, that feels like an error unless you make it really different. Right. So that's what I would say. Same applies here. It's just like subtly different enough that it feels like an error, a mistake, or a lack of attention to detail. Those 2 fonts look different by like a point or 2, and that just make it all the same. That's where that comment came from. Next question. If it's not a known brand, should you include a paragraph about? Okay, that's a great question. Really good question, actually. So what I've seen done is I would not do a paragraph. I'm not meaning to be nitpicky on your word, because I think this is what you mean, but just to be specific, a sentence at most. I don't think it's entirely required, but I think some recruiters actually really appreciate it. I've seen folks comment on it as such. that you put some company that just like no one's ever heard of before. So just to be able to say, hey, this is actually a Fortune 100 company that's in the industrial systems or something, I would, if you're applying to law firms and you're a lawyer, people probably know the law firms, but I think some of that context is a little helpful. Large company, small company, a little bit of context about the company can be helpful as long as it doesn't take too much space. Keep it really tight and to the point. I would not use that text as an what I've seen people do is use that text as a way to sort of describe their position and what they did there. That's what the achievements are for. That's what the bullets are for. That's just redundant. Do not do that. But if you need just a single, I would even say a single line, because a sentence could span 2 lines. Keep it to 1 line of space on your resume. Okay, cool. Yeah, same question. Yep, it'll be recorded. So question about verb tenses. Again, I'll kind of go just like consistency, right? I have horrible grammar, and I'm really bad at that stuff. And luckily, folks on the Teal team like Leah and Lara help me. But I just do think that consistency is good, right? Say someone is kind of a grammar nerd, and they're like, "Why are they doing that?" So I just think like err on the side of consistency. It's one less thing that'll sort of raise an eyebrow, get someone to question why you did what you did. So yes, to whoever asked about the problematic with the tenses, I would say yes. Yeah, Maddie's talking about the UX principles. Yeah, and if we think about how we read documents, it is left to right, top down, right? So I'll talk about this on the next one, but draw a diagonal across the page, and that's kind of how our eye skims. All right. What if we have no metrics to show? Okay, so this is a very common question on resumes. I don't think you have to have metrics for everything, but I would really encourage you to try. Right? It's not obvious a lot of times where the metric is, but like businesses at the end of the day run on metrics. Now you could say I worked in a nonprofit where we just weren't, affected that way. Really try to think about if you didn't have a metric, what was your boss's metric that they were measured by? And if your boss didn't have one, what's the company's metric? Right? If you're a nonprofit, right? Like how much impact, how much money was donated as a result of the nonprofit, how much money how many people were, how many water wells, if you worked at a place that sort of brought water to third world countries, how many more wells were made as a result of you work at, of that company being in existence, then work your way backwards from that, right? Well, to be able to do that, we needed to raise money. Were you part of that process? Oh, no. Okay. Well, if I wasn't part of the money raising process, we definitely had to run events to raise money. Were you part of that process? So work your way backwards from like the key objectives of the company and see what way you were involved. And then the next follow-up question is like, well, I don't have those numbers. No one gave them to me. We didn't measure it. That's okay. You can be general. I think you can throw in words like approximately or close to or a little bit above, and you can say, so, we overachieved our fundraising objectives by 30% year over year or something, so you can do it. Again, no one's going to check you on it. As long as not like gross negligence or just pure untruths, I think it's okay. And then if you really can't do that, you can still talk about how you made things better in a qualitative way. So I would try to describe your impact. Numbers are great because one, visually, they stand out from the sea of text. Also, they show that you can speak to your impact. We tend to believe numbers. It just kind of happens, unfortunately. So numbers are good. As soon as they're numbers, it just feels more real, like you had that impact. But if you can't, talk about your impact in a qualitative way. Okay. Here's some more answers. Okay, I think I'm mostly caught up. Okay, great. All right, let's jump to the next resume. Let's see, can I do this? And happy to take feedback on this visual style. I could see myself getting a little too excited with annotating. So if it's confusing or not helpful, let me know. Okay, present screen share. Okay, So this resume is for a operations manager. And we'll dive in the same way. So some good things I'm seeing already that I like, kind of traditional resume format. So let me dive into it. Like, again, right at first glance, I'm seeing us take a lot of space for kind of introduction, and we're not kind of like cutting to the chase and getting straight into it. So I think this taking as much space as it is unnecessary. That could easily be that. That's kind of my preference. Again, my job on these is to be as nitpicky as possible. I think this is totally fine. I would not sort of like, not submit this resume. It's perfectly fine. But these are ways to make it a little bit better. Some things here. So Army veteran, I'm not involved in helping veterans get hired enough to know if that's a good thing or not to include there. So that's kind of why I left it unhighlighted, but it could be, it couldn't be. If someone's an expert in helping veterans re-enter the workforce, I would love feedback on that. And I also wanted to call out a positive. This is the right way to show your LinkedIn profile. It is the full link. You could drop the www if you wanted to. I don't think it's a big deal. And then their URL was here. I think that's perfect. And it's also a live link. I could click it and go to the person's profile. What I think is not great is when someone just says LinkedIn and makes it a live link, because if for some reason the link breaks, now there's no way for them to get to your LinkedIn profile. So I wanted to call this out as what I think is the best way to put on your LinkedIn profile. Again, the www, you don't have to. You could almost even drop all that and just do in and that part. That's probably a little too terse for me. I would do linkedin.com / your URL. I don't think you're not going to be that tight on space, but it's a little thing that I think matters. Okay, professional summary. Again, I'll just say it. I don't think I need that word. I could put in, I call it the target title, the job you're applying to. And if you're going to customize one thing on your resume, I think just put in the target title for the job you're applying to. It just like, it's projecting you as that position. Right. So if this person was applying to a director of operations, just put it right here. It's like, yes, I am a director of operations. And then the summary is beneath it. I like that format a lot. And and I think it makes a nice pitch. So, okay, now this professional summary feels long. Again, just like as I'm reading it, I'm just like, whoa, that's a lot. Here's another thing. I don't like block alignment. Because it creates inconsistent spacing between words because it's trying to block it out. And I don't think it's great for legibility. I think it's fine in a paperback book when they're getting like 10 words per line and my eyes don't have to do as much work. But even still, I think it's okay to have that edge. That's just my opinion. But these are little things that I think about, right? Because like now this line has all sorts of different spacing, and I actually think my opinion is that's worse. So let's look at this summary. Senior operations manager and intelligence analysis. See that right there could be this title right here. And you can project it in bold and think that's who I am. And ideally that could be the job I'm applying to. And, I'm presenting in the terms of what they're looking for, not in some definition that I've needed to kind of abstract to satisfy a lot of different jobs. That seems like great credential building because that's probably not easy to get. So that's good. Like, another thing is you need to brag in a resume. It might feel weird. You want to do it in kind of a humble way that's not obnoxious, but highlight these things. So I think that's great. Shows that this person's trusted. They were able to achieve that. Okay, 15 years of experience. Proven, I don't think you need. I don't think that really adds anything. Lots of keywords, which I love. Again, these are the kinds of things that you could tailor per job you're applying to if you wanted to. Okay, possesses an extensive background in analysis, strategic planning. Okay, now we're starting to get kind of redundant. Possesses, skilled. They're all kind of saying the same things and just kind of putting, I don't think. Yeah, so the big takeaway for me is I think it's redundant. I think it could be tighter, and we're missing metrics. With 15 years of experience, I want to see some aggregate metrics, right? How many, what is the total, dollars saved. If you're in operations, you make a business more efficient. Give me some metrics about your career in aggregate about how you've been efficient. Real quick, because I see it, how long should a summary be? I think 2 sentences. I wouldn't have it take more than like 4 lines on a resume. There's no hard science behind that. That's just kind of my opinion. I feel like I just want to keep saying that because all these things are opinion and lots of people have different ones. A lot of people don't even believe that there should be a professional summary. I'm a big believer that I think it's a good thing. Unless it's your first job. If you've only had one job, you probably don't need a professional summary. I think the value of it is the ability to aggregate many jobs. That's why I like it. So if you've only had one job, you're fresh out of school, I would not use it. Okay, so here again, I've seen this used a lot, and I see a lot of people recommend it. This kind of bulleted. I think I'll go back to what I said before. I would do one or the other. I think having both is, it's a lack of like deliberateness. I don't know if I just made that word up or not, right? It's the person trying to say, well, if this paragraph doesn't win them over, maybe this list of bulleted words will. Just make one thing that's really good. I think bullets, the risk you run with doing something like this is bullets are just so much easier to read and skim, is that someone's just going to skip this and go straight to the bullets because they're so much more digestible. And then if they're interesting, they might go back. So just pick one or the other and do one. If you want to go with a bullet format, awesome. That are just like single skills. I've seen that be very successful. If you just want to do 3 bullets that are your career highlights, is another thing that I've seen be at the top that people really like. So pick that. And if you want to do it as a paragraph, then do that. But I would say just pick one is my general advice. Okay, so next, this person has 15 years of experience, as they told us. The next section on their resume should not be education. Education should really only be at the top if you are fresh out of school, because you don't have as much work experience to highlight. Otherwise, get me straight to your work experience. Specialized training, again, I think is kind of another version of these 2 in the top. If that stuff's really important and you want to highlight it, get it into the summary, highlights, whatever that, let's call it the intro section more broadly. Okay. And we're also using a bunch of different notations now. We got bullets, we got pipes. These little vertical lines are called pipes. And so that's something I would do there. All right, now work experience. Okay, so this is going company first, location, job title. If you're in operations, I want to see numbers. That were complete. These are like descriptive achievements. Sorry. When you can avoid just like describing what you did, it's again, there's just like not much. It's like, okay, so you did that, but like, did you do it well? What was the impact of you doing that? Did that even matter? Right? Like, collaborated with colleagues on the improvement in what was the result of this? Did people onboard better? Were you able to retain employees longer? Did it increase success rate on hiring? Did it increase retention of employees? You don't even have to have the metric. You could say, which resulted in an improvement in employee retention. For the question earlier about not having a metric, that's okay. But what was that sort of action verb that describes how it's better as a result? That's what you want to say. How is it better as a result of what you did? What was the impact you had? If you have numbers, amazing. If you don't, you can still use language to kind of talk about how the situation is better after you did this thing. Provided beneficial advice and support to new employees, answered questions, and resolved any issues. Again, like very descriptive. And what I would say is that first job in your work experience is the most important. You have to think like every line on your resume, its job is to get the person to read the next line. Right. And I know that that's a lot of pressure, But what that means is, as you work your way down the resume, those words mean less because you might have lost them, So this job as the first job, highly likely that it's going to get looked at, it's got to be really good. And so I think these achievements are not that great. They're lacking numbers. And so those, the person hasn't been at the company that long. But something to think about. Okay. Sorry. So now where my mind goes is I'm seeing, let's go ahead and get rid of those, is I'm seeing two presents. So I'm like, wait, does this person have two jobs at the same time? Kind of might want to see that addressed because that's what people are thinking, right? They're looking for reasons for like, wait, what's going on? What's fishy here? So that's something I would, maybe you would say like part-time, contractor, full-time, because you have this. I wouldn't, that's not always you should do that. But because that's there, now I've got questions, right? So in sales, there's oftentimes talked about objections when you're going to go make a sale of something. It's like, what is my prospect going to object to? And in a great sales process, you preempt objectives. That's going to be an objective right there. So how do you preempt that objective? So you are reducing all the doubts that a person has when they read this document. Okay, now here, performed operational planning support in various, okay, great numbers, 100 projects, 2,200 employees. Now we're a little bit descriptive. I just reviewed operations reports. Okay. Yeah, these two could get a little better, but you've been at this job longer. I would maybe put that one first instead of the other one. Again, think about the order. Think about like, best to worst, obviously none of them are bad, but like really, like if you want every line up, to be better than the previous one. Okay. So now let's go down here. Okay. So now, another little thing, I said this in videos before, but again, I just sort of give my opinions. I prefer the numbers instead of having to read all these out. Not a big deal one way or the other. Okay, so now we're on to page 2. So this is confusing. Why do I have a date here and a date here and they don't match? I think what they're telling me is like during. Oh, no. I'm so sorry. I take that back. That's my mistake. I missed it. But okay. So what they're doing is they're putting the tenure in each position, which obviously fits within here because they held multiple roles. So here's every position, which is great. This is what we recommend you do. You put this is if you wanted to do both. This is a perfectly fine. Actually, in the Teal resume builder, we now have this as a setting where you can do both. You can do it by company, by position, or both. There's something about it like going this way that I don't entirely love. If we're putting dates on the right, let's keep dates on the right. But I could see how that would be confusing to have two dates right below each other. But I think my preference is I would prefer that. That's personal preference. I don't think that makes a huge difference. Okay, man, 205 personnel. Look, these are great. We've got numbers. Yeah, these achievements are better. Produced, monitored, promoted, ensured, streamline's a great word. Trained, supervised, produced, developed, supervised. Monitored is one I don't love. It feels kind of passive. Kind of like managed, even like created the budget. All right, so that's those. And then now below is, again, we've got competencies, that we had up above. So I just think like avoid redundancy, pick a spot, make it full, and get it good. And then notable awards is great. So yeah, look, I think overall this resume is an A. I think you could make it an A+ with some of these tweaks. Okay, so that's that one. Let me field some questions here. Okay, so what is the sweet spot for number of bulleted achievements? So, I don't think you should have more than like 20 on a resume. It just feels like a lot. And I think they can reduce as you get further back in your career history. So we generally recommend 3 to 5 on your most recent position, and then work your way down to maybe even 0 on some of your distant positions if you even need to include those roles at all. So you can be like 3 to 5 on your most recent position, then maybe 3 to 5 again, and then 2 to 3 in the next couple positions, and you should be somewhere between 15 and 20 achievements. And I think that's good. That's what people are going to realistically read. Does Teal have a list of typical recruiter objections? No, but we could make one. Seems like a cool, fun thing to crowdsource. I can try to think of a couple things off the top of my head. They're not what everyone thinks it is. It's not gaps on your resume. It's going to be, if you don't include months and years, just like, why are you doing that? Why are you what are you trying to hide? So just, they're going to assume the worst. I just said this in the YouTube video. If you put, 2020 to 2021, they're going to assume December 2020 to January of 2021, that you were only there for 2 months, that there's a reason you're trying to mask the accuracy of the months, which you're probably not. You just thought it looked nicer, but that's kind of what, the general thing they're going to do. And I can try to think of some other ones that are just kind of reasons not to, things that are sort of eyebrow raisers. Because they're best practice to list duration rather than just the dates. That's honestly what they're doing. They're computing that. I haven't seen anybody just flat out list the duration. If I were to put on my recruiter hat for a second, they would appreciate it, because it's what they're doing in their heads. It's just not a norm. So I think that's why we don't see it. But it's what they're doing in their head. It's exactly what they're computing in their head because they want to understand duration. Okay, is it a best practice to? Okay, yeah, we just talked about that one. Should you put education at the bottom? So again, unless you're a recent graduate, be it as a career pivoter, someone who went back to school, and it is a core part of your narrative, I think you put it at the end. Okay, cool. Sorry. Thank you, Samantha, for answering that for me. How far back should you go with your work experience? So my answer to that is go as far back as it is relevant to the job you're applying to. So your resume doesn't have to be everything you've ever done. That's actually called a CV, curriculum vitae. That is by definition a document that has everything you've ever done. A resume doesn't have to do that. Some jobs, I think governmental jobs or different things that you apply to require that you show every job you've ever had, but a resume does not have to do that. Especially when you're a little later in your career, 15, 20 plus years of work experience, the truth is that first or second job you had isn't going to be relevant. My sort of, the only time I deviate from that is if it is valuable in the sense of building domain knowledge, and that there was aspects that it gave you exposure to an industry that is relevant to the job you're applying to today. Because maybe the last, 15 years ago, you worked at a B2B SaaS company, but the last 10 years, you've been working in D2C e-commerce. And now you're applying again to a B2B SaaS company where you want to show, look, I've been in that. Sure, the industry has changed a ton in 10 years, but I've been there. So that might be because it helps build your case. So you want every piece of text on your resume to build your case for why they should hire you for that job. Where's the case coming from? The job description. So if you don't think that anything on the resume is helping make a case relative to the job description, then don't include it. Now, you can use a bit of conjecture if you want, being an expert, if it's not explicitly written out in the job description, but you think that there is like a 1 degree connection, then include it. But that's okay. You're using your judgment to build a case. Don't just say, well, maybe that might be of value. If it's a maybe, then just don't include it on your resume. All right. Let's see. Isaac, I did say 20 points. But again, none of these are hard and fast rules. I just think if you're more than 20, that's a lot. But if you feel like it takes you 21 or 25, do what you got to do to present your best self. But I think less is more. Focus on quality, not quantity. I just see a lot of people who just like feel they got to get a lot of bullets on there, and it doesn't work. Then just no one reads anything. So just focus on writing fewer, very good, impactful achievements. Okay. Maria said, a recruiter advised me that the ATS will penalize resumes with over 20 years experience. Is that your experience? So that's a very, very broad generalization. And again, ATSs don't actually do anything. They don't penalize. They don't, they're not that intelligent. I think Amy Miller calls them like digital filing cabinets. Is ageism a real thing? Yes. Do people get rejected for being overqualified? Yes. But that's also a fact. We can't rewrite history. So if a company, they're going to find out you have more than 20 years of experience. So for some reason, that would be awful and prejudiced, but if for some reason that's an important criteria to them, they're going to find out anyway. So I don't think like omitting it from your resume or obfuscating your years of experience is necessarily a good thing. If a position requires 3 years experience and you're doing a career pivot and you've got 20 years of experience, again, this might be one of those things where a company says like, well, I can tell you because I've been on this side of the process and hear people say these things. Well, it's like, well, they're not going to want to be a junior person. They've made higher salaries, they've managed, they've led, they're going to want to move up very quickly. We're not going to have the budget to move them up very quickly. They're going to get very tired of the tasks and the rolling up their sleeves because they've managed before. And all those things could be true, could be false. They don't know you. They don't know what you actually want. Maybe you want to go roll up your sleeves again. But those are some of the conversations that happen. So the objection would be, this person has too much experience. I think what you want to do is if you are applying to something that, your years of experience are very different from the years of experience that are required in the job description, preempt it. Talk about how you're excited to get in there and do what you want to do. But I think too many years of experience on their own are not a thing. It's like, what is the conversation they're having as a result of it? And you want to preempt that. And so that if you have any follow-up questions, let me know, but I hope that makes sense. But I don't think like omitting, withholding is helpful. And I would really look at the years of experience required on the job description to help you sort of shape your approach. Okay, how are we doing on time? Whoa, I've only made it through 2 and it's 4:44. All right, let's get to the next one. All righty. So, all right, format-wise, I'm a fan. Just look above the fold. Look how much I'm getting of the resume already. It's like, bam, I can start to dive into it. Sure, there's no professional summary, but that's okay. I'm immediately starting to get to what this person does. I like that the header is compact and tight. Just like, it's a great, great header. Super clean, super simple, doesn't take a lot of space. I'm a huge fan. All right, so now let's jump into the content. Again, following things that I like as best practices. Company first. Again, I don't know who Folks Health is or the Trevor Project. As it came up a little earlier, possibly you could do just a sentence describing what it is. I don't think it's critical. But you could if you want. I just think even formatting wise, it really starts to throw you off because then you have like a line in between the two. So I don't love it, but you could do it if you wanted to. Okay. One thing I don't like, just like a little thing here, is like location above date. I would maybe just put location, do like comma, location here. And so now you just have simple, clean dates and you don't have two things. And these are super nitpicky, but just some things that sort of just make them a little hard. It's like I read remote first and then, oops. So I don't think it's sounding is helpful. And also now, especially since they're remote. But anyways, nitpicky stuff. Let's not dwell on that. All right, let's jump into, one thing here is I do think a target title would be helpful. Again, I always think a target title is great. I'd probably, if I was just going to do a target title, I'd maybe put it above professional experience or just centered below the contact info. All right, member support operations analyst. I don't like the word routinely. Exceeded ticket handling goals by resolving an average of 45. Okay, this is awesome. What I would do is maybe flip this achievement. This is super nitpicky. I think this is a great resume. So just thinking about how you describe impact faster. And this is even something in a lot of the like resume achievement feedback and guidance I give. I'm now like thinking about doing this backwards because it's easier to describe what I did and then what was the impact. But when you can, and I have to, again, like I said, I have to keep reminding myself of this, is try to flip it. What if you could say, achieved a CSAT, 96% CSAT score, well above 30% tickets a day and 80% by handling, 45 Zendesk tickets. It's just like, tell me the impact you had. Oh, wow, that's impressive. How'd you do that? And then tell me how. Right. So that's just a way I think to like really take achievements to the next level. Get me excited with the impact you had and then tell me you did it. But like I said, I think this is great. Build and maintain documents of SOPs. Okay, so here you go. I would flip it. Increased efficiency and improve quality control by building and maintaining documentation of SOPs. Right. So I would just flip that. Again, I don't know if this person's on the call, but I think this is a great resume. I'm trying to get this from like an A+ to an A++. So that's something you could do. Now, I would say in terms of order of operations when you're doing the work, write how you did it and then the impact, because it's just easier. And our brains kind of do that naturally. Then after you write them, go back and flip them. All right, collaborate with cross-functional teams such as product and engineering. It's okay, so that's what I did. To quickly resolve. And okay, so flip it. All right, so I think we get the theme here. I don't need to do that over and over again. And I'd probably ditch this bottom achievement, but I think those are all really good achievements. And I think the first one's the best one, which is great. Okay, we don't have to go through all of these. So here's where that location thing is starting. I guess location is aligned to the company. Yeah, I would maybe even do it here. And so now you can have these dates per position. Great. Look, fits on one resume. I think this resume is awesome. I think it's really, really good. I think it does a really good job. If I had to count bullets, this one's got 5. Let's call that 6. So we're at 11, 15 bullets, right? Look, that's a lot of text delivering a lot of value and a lot of content in 15 bullets. And so I think this is really great. It's a 1-page resume. Yeah, the person's been in the workforce for about 2 years, but they've held a number of positions. So tenure is kind of doesn't matter. Another thing. So here's something, here's a case for why not to list dates per position. So if I'm a recruiter, this is what I'm doing in my head. I'm like, okay, we're in October. This is 10 months. Okay, cool. February of 21. Okay, so this is 11 months. Okay. Now, if they sort of skim over this part and just don't realize it and stay on this level, they're like, oh, wow. Okay, that was, I'm struggling with the math, but so that's 8 plus 2. That's 10 months. And then that's, to 18. That's like 14 months plus, So I'm like, wow, this person's job hoppy. Like they haven't stayed longer than 18 months in any company. Where the truth is they were at this company for well over 2 years. So that's why I like tenure at the company level, not at the position level, because that's implied that you moved up and they'll just divide it. So even if you were there for 18 months and you had 2 positions, it's like, great, they moved up, 9 months a position. That's great. That's amazing. So that's one of the things I would change on this resume. Irrelevant on the first two positions because they only had one position. I actually think quite relevant on the second position, given that one is, well, they're both over a year, but that might be the knock on someone earlier in their career that they're job hoppy. Again, we can debate job hoppiness, and I think it's stupid, and I don't think it's a reason for anyone to not get hired. But companies want this sense of loyalty, and then you're not going to bounce in 12 months. So don't give them any reason. Again, Maddie, to your question, that's one of those objections. Just don't give them a reason to object. Show that you have stayed at companies for almost 3 years. So that's something I would change there. All right. Let's see how we're doing on time. We'll do. Let me see if there's any questions. Re-entering the workforce. All right, cool. Carolyn, send us your resume. We're happy to take a look. Or if you know anyone that has re-entered or is re-entering, the benefit there is to also send us a JD. We'll add that to the form, a job you're applying to. Right now it's not there because then I can do those side by side. Okay, so I love this question. Should your resume always be one page? I think this gets completely overblown. And, I see people, the fact that it's one page is the wrong thing to focus on. Because what I see people do is make really terrible decisions by making the font illegible, making margins razor thin. And sure, they checked the box. They got it on one page, but you need a microscope to read it. Nobody's going to do that. You've just made the process to consume that information so arduous that I'm not even going to read your resume, and we sort of miss the point. So what I would say is what I always say to this is the first page of your resume needs to be great. If the first page of your resume is not great, they're not going to read the second page. I know someone will always say, well, if it's less than one page, we're not going to read it. Look, I think that's objectively untrue. I think if the first page of your resume is really good, they will probably read the second page, right? So focus your effort on having the first page of your resume be clear, concise, legible, and focus on that. Don't obsess on the one page thing. I think good recruiters, they'll read 2 pages. Now, if your resume is 5 pages, it's not about the 5 pages. It's about, oh, this person cannot cull. This person cannot edit. This person cannot distill their achievements. They're wordy. Right. And it's more about what they infer from the length and less about the actual length. And so that's why I get a little frustrated on the one page thing. It's the wrong thing to focus on. Just make sure. And even that, let's extend it further. If the first top half of the page is not really good, they're not going to read the whole page, the whole first page. So like I said earlier, you just got to continue to build the case for why they should hire you. And again, that's why I'll make the plug for the professional summary. I like it's an ability to make a pitch. Okay, let's do one more here. I'm just reading Maddie's question. Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so Maddie said, I once knew someone who had unfortunately been laid off 3 times in a row, leaving them with short tenure at each company. How would you handle that to eliminate an objection? Okay, so this is where sort of copywriting can get a little creative. So option 1 is just be objective about it. You could put company did mass layoffs, you could address it straight up in your professional summary. And then sort of speak to the benefits, got a lot of exposure to a lot of different things, got to see a lot of different things. In my short time there, I had this kind of impact. So that's one approach. That's the radical candor approach. I'm not sure I'd recommend that approach, but I just wanted to put it out there. Another approach that I've seen, again, this one comes with its own cons, is to roll them up into one. You could do it by listing out the 3 names of the companies and saying, this time you could list it out as contracting. Even though it was full time, I think that's okay. So that's a way. So you could do it so it shows a period of time in your life But then sort of in the details describe what it was. The other thing you can do is various companies as like what I would call like the company header, and then the positions are what you did at each company. So you can use the tenure of that whole span. It's not, one could say it's a little disingenuous. Um, if you're really worried about it, that's something you could do. I don't have a recommendation actually. I'm just kind of um, just saying things you could do. Would love feedback and thoughts from others. It also depends on what kind of time we're talking about. If you're talking about like 3 months at each company, I also think that when was it during COVID? Is it now that, we're starting to be in a recessionary period? So I think, again, I always sort of say my first preference is honesty, because you're going to have to talk about it at one point anyway. But for a resume, because it skims so fast, maybe there's some things you might do there to make it a little different. I'll think on that one more. Okay, let's do one more here real quick. Okay, so this is let's see what this technical project manager. All right, so jumping right into it, I like simple, clean header. What's missing here is there's no LinkedIn profile. I think in today's day and age, if you're applying for this kind of position, you should have a LinkedIn profile. That's an objection. That's kind of like, why don't they have a LinkedIn profile? And then location, take it or leave it. It's not here. I don't think it's the end of the world, but it is kind of considered standard. So I would do that. But okay, the next thing I see is this is a 2-column resume. I've tested a big number of 2-column resumes on various ATS platforms, and for the most part, it's fine. You have to test it on a per resume basis. But when I said earlier, don't do anything for the ATS, that still applies. Where it'll affect you is like if you upload your resume to have it like auto-populate the application for you or have it auto-populate things within the ATS, it might break it. It might not be able to read it. So that's the drawback, but a person is still going to read it. So it's not a big deal. I've seen recruiters tell me they don't like a 2-column resume because they just want to be able to work their way down. They don't want to have to jump around. But for me also, if I'm going to do a 2-column, and since we read in this direction, what's more important to me, that they read my education or my professional experience? Generally, I think it's professional experience. So I would flip these. Now, let me see when this person graduated in 2020. Yeah, I would flip these. I would put the column on the right. So I get straight into the professional experience, and this sort of ancillary information is on the right. Now, one could argue our eye does this naturally. I'd probably buy that argument. But it's also research has shown from that Ladders survey that was done a while ago is that recruiters kind of do this. They read in like an F pattern. And so they read the spine and then work their way in. So I would maybe move it over to the right. Okay, so now let's dive into it. So education, cool. Company first, Brooks Instrument, okay. Here we go. Impact first. Boosted revenue by 21%. This is awesome. This is really good. Right there. You got me. You boosted revenue. Oh, that's amazing. By 21%. How'd you do it? Love it. This is really good. Improved timeline by 3 months. So you see this? This is starting with the impact. These are excellent. And then they get a little more descriptive towards the bottom. I would consider maybe dropping 1 or 2 of these. So here, what this person's doing is they worked at the same company. I would recommend against this. I immediately thought these were each different jobs, but they're not. They're all at the same company, right? You can see that here. So what I would do is get rid of that, and just list them as positions. You don't need location at each one. That's redundant. If you wanted to do it by position, and then honestly, I would do tenure at the whole company. Given that this person's been at the same company, every job is at the same company. So, I don't know if you need a professional summary, but maybe because you had multiple positions to kind of talk about what you did and talk about some of your aggregate experiences while your time at Brooks Instrument, so boosted revenue, see if revenues in other places, but you can talk about total revenue, total cost reductions, which I think could be interesting. So that's a change I would do here, because this feels like this person was kind of jumping around, but unless I kind of caught that subtlety, they're all actually at the same company. And so if you find yourself repeating yourself on your resume, that's also where I'd stop and say, like, wait, do I need to repeat myself? Is there a more efficient way to communicate this in writing? And it can sort of prevent the risk of someone misinterpreting what actually happened. But one page, tight, crisp, clean. I like this resume a lot. And I think the way that they wrote their achievements was very, very good. Okay. See if there's any other questions here. Okay. Thanks, Maddie, for the suggestions. You can definitely sign up for our newsletter. We talk about these on our newsletter. We're also going to try to get into the cadence of doing these on a regular basis every week. So look out for that. But hey, that's another session of resume reviews. We got through 4 of them. We will be publishing these as YouTube that you can watch back. Once it's published, we'll publish that out on our newsletter. So check that out. Yeah, we're gonna do more of these. We're gonna try to make the submission process. I will try to get to more of them, but really the goal is to not review a person's resume. It's really to communicate best practices through the context of real life examples. So as long as we can continue to do that, and you all feel like you're getting value and learning things, let me know. We'll continue to do them. If some of like the occupational specific stuff or occupation specific stuff is helpful, we can try to do that. There's a note section in the submission form. So if there's particular questions you have about the resume, we can do it. But please let us know. For anyone that doesn't know, we're part of a company called Teal that makes tools to help you job search better. Some of these best practices that I was talking about are baked into our resume builder. We actually analyze it. We tell you almost like Grammarly for your resume. So give it a shot. If you've signed up for Teal, you're on the newsletter by default. If not, we can post in the comments how to subscribe to it. Actually, I think it might even be on our website. I think we have a page. It's not so pretty, but let's see. We do. Hey, what do you know? It is tealhq.com/newsletter. Going to be revamping that page, but you can put in your email address there and you'll get enrolled in our newsletter. All right. So thanks so much. Hopefully you found that helpful. Feel free to DM, Slack us, anything we can do to help you with your job search. We're here. All right. Best of luck and happy Halloween. We'll see you on the next one.